President Trump's health care bill fails bigly. Then, from the White House to the outhouse, Pope Francis is caught on tape. And finally, a word in defense of Raymond Cardinal Burke. So, do you think that the Cardinal has wimped out? Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. Michael Matt down in the catacombs, just sitting here with producer Rob, trying to figure out which entity is occupied by more people who are hiding their own Easter eggs every year, the church or the state. The Trump administration obviously didn't have a great week, Rob, this past week. Not so much. You know, I'm talking, of course, about the health care bill, but listen, let's not lose our heads over this. This is something that was anticipated. Donald Trump seems to be trying to feel his way here to see what can be done. But as we said again and again in the run-up to the election in 2016, Donald Trump is Donald Trump. He's not the second coming. He's not Garcia Moreno. We can hardly expect a poor, beleaguered American president, no matter how well-intended he might be, to drive all of the evil out of this Christophobic world of ours. And so a little patience is in order with this administration. They do seem to be flailing about right now, but you know what? Hillary Clinton is gone. Obama's legacy is up for grabs. The New World Order lost a round. These are all good things. And this is why the Trump victory matters. As Washington wars against itself now over health care, we can console ourselves with the knowledge that had Hillary Clinton won, there would have been no warring right now, no gridlock, no slowdown, only clear and smooth sailing for the bad guys, right? I think we all agree on this. And besides, one of the things that Trump did right out of the gate that didn't get a lot of press coverage was he did sign an executive order defunding these demons. Take a look.
It's not a matter of how I feel about it coming out intact, but I got to worry about my staff and you know, people's feelings about it coming out looking like a baby. Like, you know, because the thing is, the law states you're not supposed to do any maneuvers after the fact to try to cause demise. So it's really tricky. It's a mess. Research shows that ditch doesn't make the procedure easier in someone who is well trained, but I have to tell you anecdotally, my biceps appreciate when the ditch works.
Really?
So,
it's in the biceps when you're doing a D&E?
It does not take me any longer to complete the procedure, but it takes more force.
Really? Yeah. When does it start? What station does it start getting really difficult, like it is like a workout?
20 weeks.
Yep, that's right. There's your garden variety Planned Parenthood doctor talking about dispatching live babies while she's building up her biceps, her muscles. You know, Rob, she almost seems a little too stupid to be as evil as her words would suggest. I don't know what she is. But she's walking proof that we are now worse than the Nazis. There's no question about this. You know, the atrocities of the Nazi eugenicists and the Nazi doctors that we heard about. I mean, when I was a kid, this sort of thing scandalized and terrorized, you know, my parents, people of that generation. And now listen to this lady, tearing babies apart, selling their bloody little parts. You don't know how to even react to something like this, to come to grips with something like this. What is that thing that we just saw? I don't know. But because it's what it is what it is, I think we can console ourselves again. Trump took $100 million away from International Planned Parenthood, supporting creatures like that around the world. He took $30 million away from Maurice Stopes International and millions of dollars from other groups who are doing the same sort of thing, hacking up babies all over the world. The Trump win was a major disruption for the baddies. This is true. It was an accident. It wasn't anticipated. It was a surprise. If you don't believe me, just look at the characters over at CNN. Still, the Russians are coming. The Russians are coming. I mean, every night you can tune in to CNN from watch one night, then a week and a half later watch again, and they're on the same stupid script. The Russians, and more Russians.
CNN has learned new details of the FBI investigation into potential links between individuals associated associated with the Trump campaign and the Russian government.
Associates of President Donald Trump communicated with suspected Russian operatives' ties to Russia.
Russians focus on these Russia ties, and these Russian officials have...
The Russia question remains unsolved.
There's provable coordination between the Trump campaign and Russian associates.
There's collusion between Trump officials and the Russians.
And the Russians, Russia.
Potential contact with Russian intelligence services.
Between the campaign and the Russians, and all Americans should be upset about this.
Despite all of this interaction, U.S. officials tell the Times that so far there's no evidence that the Trump team worked with Russia to influence the election.
It's insane. They got nothing else because they will do anything to stop us, to stop the people that voted for Donald Trump, the pro-lifers, the pro-America, pro-God, pro-Christian folks. Look what's happening right now. This is proof of just how little the will of the people actually matters in this country. Nobody cared for years, but nobody ever admitted that voting was nothing more than the suggestion box for the slaves. But now we see that. Our democracy has become a joke. Trump's position as president of the United States, it seems pretty shaky right now, right? Why do you suppose that is? Every time you see him on TV, he looks shaky and uncertain. Does he have the reins of power or not? You know why he looks that way? Because obviously, he's got powerful competition right there inside the Beltway, which is what the conspiracy theorists have been saying for a long time. Looks like they were right. There really is a shadow government, a deep state, a coordinated effort by career government employees to influence state policy without regard for democratically elected leadership, right? That's what we're seeing here. Who cares what the people said? Who cares what the vote was? This deep state doesn't give a hang about the will of the American people or the temporary occupant of the White House, unless that temporary occupant happens to be a radical, pro-abort, one-worlder like they are. So even you Trumpers out there should probably be thanking this guy for ripping the mask off the phony democracy that America has become. So he lost a round. Okay, fine. They lost big. They lost bigly. It was a compromise, a phony compromise that nobody liked, set up by Paul Ryan, evidently, and his pals to appease the liberal counterparts across the aisle and just to give Trump the easy W. Well, Trump went along with that. He went along with the rhinos, and he shouldn't have, and it didn't work. And the conservative caucus got up on its high horse and said, no, we're not going to go along with this compromise. And this, friends, is exactly what we down here in the underground, this is why we endorsed Trump to begin with, because we wanted the conservative people, the conservative groups, to have the influence on the White House rather than the radical left, rather than Planned Parenthood and, you know, the usual suspects, NARAL, Al Sharpton, and all of that. The way we look at this thing, the whole administration, but Donald Trump just got himself a wake-up call. And the only way he's not going to be a lame duck president for the duration, is if he sticks with the folks that got him in the Oval Office in the first place. The pro-life, pro-family, pro-Christian, true conservative Americans. That's the end of it. We're going from the White House to the outhouse tonight. We have poor Pope Francis now this week caught on tape using a porta-pot in Milan. Now, I really don't know what the protocol is there, Rob. I don't want to come down too hard on the man. He's 80 years old, and evidently he had to go to the bathroom. I understand that. But I mean, for heaven's sakes, what's the matter with Team Bergoglio that these things keep happening? Was this another, stunt for Pope Francis the Humble, or was this just complete incompetency? They didn't take care of the man's needs beforehand. I don't know. That pretty much sums up the whole pontificate. Malice or stupidity? I don't know. You tell me. But whatever it was, and you see all these people, it's just so sad to see this. All these, folks that are in Milan watching the Pope go by, and they whip out their iPhones, and they're taking pictures of the Pope and video of the Pope as he's going to the bathroom, This was an embarrassing incident that shows just how far the Catholic papacy has plummeted into the sewers of egalitarianism and monarchophobia. Monarchophobia. You think that's a word, Rob? Monarchophobia? I don't know, but it seems like it fits. I like it. Monarchophobia. So anyway, we see from this how now that the Pope has come off his throne and it's also equal, and the idea of him as pontiff and king is gone. So we now have gone from this, here's Pius XII.
Among the thousands in the Great Basilica are the 45 missions from abroad the diplomatic corps, representatives of the various Catholic orders, and bishops and archbishops from many parts of the world.
To this. Again, it's sad. I don't know. I'm just so tired of the road show, the road to Bergoglio.
But here he is getting into, mind you, a very modest car, a small Fiat, not a big limousine, not anything any other head of state would be getting into. But this is something that he insists upon everywhere he goes, and at the Vatican. He got rid of the Vatican limousine and rides around in a blue Ford Focus because he believes that the Pope should set the example of humility and living a modest life.
It's all about Jorge all day, every day. We just want the Pope again. Wouldn't it be great just to have a Pope back and not a personality, not a celebrity, not a manifestation of the fact that the Catholic Church is down in the ditches with the rest of us, slumming in the sewers, having a good time, and just forsaking the whole idea of the monarchy of the papacy. That's where we are. Wouldn't it be great to go back there? I don't know, Pope Francis, you know, if he could just be the Pope. You know, because it's not just a matter of preference anymore. This is a disaster. It's out of control. If the Catholic Church doesn't wake up, this out-of-control new order of ours is going to turn the whole world into a concentration camp. We don't have time to be messing around with the Bergoglio Roadshow right now. Our kids don't have time for that. You think I'm exaggerating? Even the Supreme Court Justice, Samuel Alito, is warning now. Just last week, he sounded like a remnant columnist. He's warning against the coming persecution of Catholics. Folks, this is real. A Supreme Court Justice typically doesn't come out and weigh in on something that sounds like it should be on the Alex Jones show. So why does he do this? Why does a Supreme Court Justice do this? Because it's real. And he says, quote, a wind is picking up that is hostile to those with traditional moral beliefs. He warned in this address that was sponsored by the Advocati Christi organization in New Jersey, he pointed to threats to the free exercise of rights of Catholics, specifically Catholics, and church-affiliated institutions. He warned, again, this is a Supreme Court justice, he warned of progressive sexual orthodoxies now that frame Orthodox Catholics as, quote, haters, end quote, says Samuel Alito. So you see why Pope Francis's "Who am I to judge" matters? You see, we're not just being meanies, just picking on the Pope, engaging in a little weekend Pope bashing. This is serious stuff. We need the Catholic Church needs to take a leadership role again in all of this, and it's not happening. We got Pope Francis just running around doing the things, using the outhouse or whatever he's doing in this constant show that goes on, while the rest of us are beginning to fear for our civil liberties and for the persecution of Catholics that's coming. You see why Amoris Laetitia is so problematic? In just a few years, again, a Catholic priest refuses to marry the homosexuals we've talked about down here before, or now refuses to give communion to the divorced and remarried. He will be charged as a total nutter in need of psychological evaluation. It's already happening, and it's going to be happening on steroids very soon. Even EWTN's National Catholic Register is now admitting this. It wrote last week, quote, "Indeed, as we witnessed during the last election cycle, those who have publicly opposed same-sex marriage for any reason are now framed as haters, even when the person targeted has no record of animus or discrimination toward homosexuals, beyond the fact that they adhere to biblical teachings on marriage," end quote. That's EWTN, that's the National Catholic Register. It is coming. But rather than coming to the aid of his people all around the world, not just those who are the Christians who are being beheaded and killed in far-off Muslim lands, but coming to the aid of people now who are finding it difficult to function as Catholics, priests who are finding it difficult to function as Catholics and to adhere to the laws of the church, moral theology of the church, on marriage. Instead of coming to their aid, Francis is just hobnobbing with Hollywood celebrities. He's meeting with, married gay couples and hosting conferences in the Vatican that feature globalist, population-controlling radicals. And then he's saying of homosexuals, who am I to judge? Here's the Pope. You can see he's going along with the program, obviously. And I know we're not the only ones who've simply had enough. We need to stand with Cardinal Raymond Burke. This brings us to our conclusion tonight. Cardinal Burke is in the news again. Now, he's one of the few churchmen in the world today who understands what's happening and who's trying in his own understated way to do something about it. Now, I get it. The frustration of some of my friends, some of my traditionalist friends even, and allies, who are upset. They can't understand why Cardinal Burke isn't doing more to publicly correct the errors of Pope Francis. Now, would I like to see Cardinal Burke go all Savonarola on Pope Francis? Well, what do you think? Of course I would. But I'm not sure that that's going to happen. And you know what? As fun as it would be to see, I'm not sure I want to see that happen. Cardinal Burke has a different approach. And people in the church today, they know very well where Cardinal Burke stands, despite the fact that at this point there hasn't been a formal correction. But again, I can't repeat this enough. The church isn't a democracy. It's not the blogosphere where the most opinionated loudmouths carry the day. No. The whole world, again, knows that Cardinal Burke is respectfully standing against the Vicar of Christ on earth, the successor of St. Peter, the visible head of the Catholic Church. Now, this is fairly significant for a man in his position. This is a terrible responsibility that maybe, just maybe, those of us down here in our catacombs or on the blogosphere can't even begin to understand. We get to say whatever we want. Princes of the Church, not so much. Not right away. They have to go very slowly because of the concern for schism and scandal. It took the superhero Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre years before he finally resisted Peter to his face, and it was for the same reason. And then he was condemned for the resulting scandal, even by some who loved and agreed with him. You don't do that as a prince of the church. You don't stand against the Pope. You don't stand against the captain of the ship. You don't do that, or the general in the army. This is a significant moment, as everyone knows, and Cardinal Burke is proceeding in his own way. He's in the same position. Yeah, he's not a blogger. He's a Catholic priest. He's a bishop. And just imagine what he's up against right now. He's the good cop in the movie that is trying to rat out the corrupt cops to internal affairs. And every day when Cardinal Burke goes to work, he faces the threats, the scorn, the ridicule, the intimidation, right? Only this isn't the police station. This isn't a movie. This is the Catholic Church. Have you noticed, by the way, where Cardinal Burke has been speaking, where he's been showing up lately? In church basements, little groups here and there, 50, 60 people sometimes, small groups, sometimes larger. Heck, he even sat for an interview with Remnant TV, the Rad Trad Remnant, a couple of months ago. He goes wherever he thinks he can help souls. Haven't you noticed this? It's what he's doing right now. He knows what the crisis is. And he's fighting it in his way. He's hard at it. He's not a street fighter like we are down here. He's a quiet academic who never asked for this limelight or for this assignment or for this cross. But he's not abandoned this mission. He's letting the world know. He's letting the world see that the Holy Father is being given every chance to clarify his position. See, now, Francis, in the wake of all this, in the wake of the dubia, Francis, his self-indicting silence speaks for itself, and I think the cardinals understand that as they prepare to reassert the infallible teachings of the Church as opposed to juxtapose them to Amoris Laetitia. That's where we stand at this point. So, speaking at Saint Raymond of Penafort Catholic Church last week, Cardinal Burke was asked, quote, "Do you know if there will be a response to the dubia from the Holy Father?" And Cardinal Burke responds, quote, "I certainly hope that there will be, because these are fundamental questions that are obviously raised by the text of the post-synodal apostolic exhortation, Amoris Laetitia. Until these questions are answered," says Cardinal Burke, "there continues to spread a very harmful confusion in the Church. Part of this confusion regards the truth that there are some acts that are always and everywhere wrong. The cardinals and I will continue to insist that there be a response to these honest questions. Many people are becoming very upset, and understandably so. I become upset myself at times. But the faithful must remember Christ's promise that the forces of evil will not prevail over the church, end quote. The forces of evil? I don't think Cardinal Burke has backed down one bit. Come on, friends, let's read between the lines here. We've got his back. We need to continue to have his back. We can't give aid and comfort to the enemy by turning on the only cardinal we got right now, by turning on him for not going far enough, fast enough. He's all we have, and he's doing his part, so now let's do ours. In a few days, canon lawyers, theologians, and scholars are going to be meeting at a very historic conference in Paris to discuss how to depose a heretical pope. Now, this is a big deal. And the cover for it, believe me, is inadvertently or otherwise, are the four cardinals. So they're doing their part, and we need to do ours. You know, in Cardinal Newman's first book, The Arians of the 4th Century, he points out, quote, that in the time of immense confusion, the divine dogma of our Lord's divinity was proclaimed, enforced, maintained, and, humanly speaking, preserved far more by the ecclesia docta than by the ecclesiodocians. That the body of the episcopate was unfaithful to its commission, while the body of the laity was faithful to its baptism, end quote, so says Cardinal Newman. And Cardinal Newman proceeds to use, to cite ancient authorities to show that the Nicene dogma was maintained not by unswerving firmness of the Holy See at the time, or councils or bishops, but by the consensus fidelium, by the people, by the Catholics in the pew, those who were inspired to keep the faith, not by Pope Liberius, but by the faithful Bishop of Alexandria, who opposed him, St. Athanasius the Great. Ladies and gentlemen, a new Arianism has seized control of the Catholic Church today, and Cardinal Burke, thanks be to God, provides us with the moral cover, the moral support of a prince of the Church. We need to stand with him. This is war. This is it. Cardinal Burke, our message to you is we're with you, Your Eminence. In the name of God, lead on. I'm Michael Matt, Remnant Underground. Please don't forget us down here this week. Support our work so we can keep coming to you every week. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.